We're the largest snacking company in the world.
That everyone in the business is a leader and have a role to play.
So it just naturally made sense that, my career would progress.
And I wish someone had told me when I was in high school that that was an option.
It's all about maintaining relationships and
have such a wide array of academic backgrounds in the CCAS.
A strong network of women here to help you.
Hi guys, Beck here from Explore Careers. Thanks once again for tuning into our interviews. So we're going to bust some myths today. When people hear the words defence industry, they hear soldiers, tanks and warfare. We are going to bust this myth once and for all and set the record straight on the defence industry, as well as discuss the enormous variety of career opportunities in South Australia right now in this fast-growing sector. Today I'm going to be joined by Reg Carruthers, who has worked for Defence South Australia since 2016, most recently in the role of Executive Director of Defence and Space at Defence SA, where he works to support and grow the defence and space industries in South Australia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Reg.
It's great to be here, Rebecca. Really good to catch up with you.
So that sounds like a really interesting job title. It sounds like a pretty full-on one as well. Can you just give us a quick explanation of what it is that you actually do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Defence SA and South Australian Space Industry Centre, it's a government agency that is responsible really for the building the defence industry and the workforce and skills. They're the two key areas to ensure that we get maximum benefit as a state from all of these exciting defence projects that are coming along. So I'm a director both on the space side. My background is Air Force, so I was brought into the organisation to really cover off on aerospace and cyber. But I've got a maritime expert, I've got a workforce and skills expert, I've got a land export expert who all work with me to really build those opportunities for South Australia.
Yeah, totally. And we're about to get into a bit more of that and all the opportunities that are currently available in South Australia. So today what we thought we would do is some myth busting, because I know that there are a lot of myths that and misconceptions and preconceptions about the defence industry, whether it be with career advisors and parents especially. It's sort of like that old school thinking and even with students themselves. So I thought, let's bust some myths with you today. So the first myth that we have, and we get a lot, is that the defence industry is all about weapons and war. And I think that that's a big concern for a lot of parents as well, who when they hear their son or their daughter say, I want to get involved in the defence industry, and they think, no, that's weapons and war. But it isn't like that, is it?
It's the defence industry, and it's interesting. We have research that shows that about 50% of people really don't understand the term defence industry.
Yeah.
And that's one of those, it is such an important myth to bust. Look, defence industry fundamentally is just industry. So it is people that are working, but one of their customers happens to be the Defence Force and are building the aircraft and the ships and the vehicles that our soldiers, sailors and airmen and airwomen operate. But the defence industry itself, the analogy I'd use, Rebecca, is that you don't have to be a pilot to build an aeroplane. So it is very much a misconception. Defence industry fundamentally is just industry. The customer happens to be the Defence Force.
Yeah, exactly. So the next myth that I've got is that to join the defence industry, I need to join the Army, the Navy or the Air Force to work in the industry.
There is no requirement to have had any military experience to work in defence industry. I go back to the point, it is just industry. The customer happens to be the Defence Force.
Yeah, awesome. Great myth to bust there.
Yeah.
Now we hear obviously a lot about shipbuilding, but it's not just all shipbuilding, is it? That, that's not the only jobs in the defence industry is in shipbuilding.
No, very much so. I mean, I'm obviously standing in front of a beautiful model of the shipyard up at Port Adelaide, and that is a key focus for South Australia. It is a very exciting time. Obviously, we're going to be building, there's a couple of offshore patrol vessels being built at the moment. We build air warfare destroyers, and then there's 9 frigates and 12 submarines we'll be building over the next sort of 40 years. But there is so much more to defence in South Australia, and obviously Australia-wide, but I focus on South Australia. There is a huge airbase north of the city up at Edinburgh, and that's really where all of our surveillance assets for Australia are based. So we've got the P8 Poseidon, which is the 737. We're going to be getting a very large unmanned aircraft called a Triton. That'll be flying off for days at a time up out of Northern Territory, but it'll all be operated from here at Edinburgh. There's electronic warfare aircraft. There's a whole base up there, which is like a village that has to support all of the people that work on the base there. And then we've got a huge defence science and technology area where really the leading edge research that's happening in defence, but just in all sorts of sectors, from artificial intelligence to electronic warfare to robotics to visualizations. It's just, there is so much variety of what's actually happening up there at Edinburgh. But yes, the visible thing is submarines and frigates, but there is so much more, including Woomera Test Range, and there's a lot to the sector.
So much. And it sounds so exciting, all of it as well. So another myth is that the jobs in the industry are only for tradies and engineers. Now, you know, what you sort of reeled off there's obviously a lot of jobs for tradies and engineers, but it's not just for people who are interested in those two particular jobs, is it?
No, and I think that's such a great point, Rebecca. And obviously there is this perception that it is just a bunch of people sitting in a room designing building a ship or a submarine. But when you actually think about industry generally, but also just supporting, as I said, the air base or even the yards up at Port Adelaide, it starts with having to do a whole bunch of infrastructure work, building facilities, hangars, runways, roads, power, all of those normal things. As I said, if you think of the base as like a small village, anything that you've got to do to build a town, you've got to do to really build and support that base. And then in industry itself, sure, you need your engineers and you need your technicians and you need your tradies, you need your welders, but you really also you're going to need your legal team, you're going to need admin staff, you're going to need people that just support all of those functions that happen in logistics. The warehousing, as I said, if you think of it like a small town, everything that you need to run a small town, you're going to need to run a base, and therefore there's opportunities in the defence industry that supports that.
So many opportunities. It's huge. Like when you think about it like that, it is massive. So you don't need a university degree to get a job in the defence industry. I know, obviously, you know, that could be helpful for certain jobs, but you could pretty much come straight out of school or TAFE and get a job in the defence industry as well.
There are so many pathways, and this is what's so exciting, is that South Australia generally is really moving. It's pivoting from sort of old generation manufacturing, which is, there is still a whole bunch of work required in those sort of areas, but into that sort of industry 4.0, advanced manufacturing, robotics. And that's going to be supported by artificial intelligence, machine learning. You need computer programmers, we need cyber experts, and cyber is one of those areas where everybody assumes you need a master's degree. Some of our best cyber technicians and people that are working actually in the cyber industry have done a Cert 4 through TAFE, and then they get straight in and work in with the companies that are developing those tools that we need to protect our data and our people, basically. So right the way from creative industries to researchers into human condition and post-traumatic stress, and all of those things are just part of this ecosystem that supports what defence actually is and what defence requires. And we haven't even talked about space, which is obviously a very closely associated area. Yeah,
which is so exciting and cool just in itself. Now, I think we've already busted this myth well and truly by now, but a lot of people just assume that there aren't many jobs in South Australia. But like what we've just been talking about for the last 10 minutes, it's clear that there are so many jobs available.
Yes, that perception that there's or that the jobs aren't well paid, or that they're not interesting, or they're not exciting, all of those are not correct.
Yeah.
I wish I was at that start of my career, not at the end, because it would be actually hard to pick what path I would want to go down, whether it's into the artificial intelligence, machine learning. Obviously, I used to fly for a living, but there are just so many opportunities, as I said, if not only in the defence and space sectors, but all of those associated, even creative industries, we just made the Mortal Kombat movie here. Those skill sets are quite transferable into industry that is going to be doing visualization for defence planning for protecting the northern borders. So there was so much cross-industry. People that work in the mining sector can work into defence and the other way around. We know we're going to be building ships and submarines for the next 40 years.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
The aircraft that we're buying and flying now are going to be operating for that same amount of time.
Yeah.
And clearly there's going to be follow-on, whatever ships look like in 40 years' time. And I'm not going to take a guess at that, Rebecca.
No, me either. Yeah, I could. Yeah, no. Can only imagine, but I kind of don't want to because it's going to be so high tech and cool. But these students who are listening right now could be involved with that, like that progression of, technology and ships. And yeah, it's a super exciting industry to be involved in, that's for sure. All right, well, we'll have to get you back again. That's all we've got time for, but I'm glad that we busted those myths with you today, Reg. That was a really important thing to do. And we appreciate your time. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate your time as well, Rebecca. It's been lovely to chat.
Well, I hope that busted some myths for you today. And I think it's pretty clear to say that jobs in the defence industry are here to stay. And there is so much opportunity. Whether you're interested in on-the-job apprenticeship-based learning, getting a qualification through a training provider like TAFE, or specialising with a university study, there's a job waiting for you in the defence industry. Visit findyourplacesa.com to learn more about the pathways that are available.